And welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I am your host, Pastor Plek, recording live here from Austin, Texas. And with me in studio is none other than Officer Sparks. We are so glad to have Somerville's finest right here in studio with us. Officer Sparks, how are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. Good morning.
Yeah, so tell us like kind of the main gig of an officer in Somerville.
So I'm a lieutenant with the Somerville Police Department. I am responsible for training, fleet maintenance, also patrol, and pretty much anything else the chief needs done. I'm kind of the go-to, get-her-done guy. So recruiting, all that stuff, I mean, we got a lot of things going on right now.
So what can you tell us about the last arrest? We don't need names or anything, but like did you have to put somebody like in cuffs lately?
Oh yeah. Man, it's a lot. We have a city ordinance against riding four-wheelers, ATVs in town. So saw a guy crossing the street in a four-wheeler, pulled him over. I don't make a big deal about it, but you know, we got to talk about it. And turns out he had a warrant for burglary of a motor vehicle.
Oh.
So he went to jail.
Nice.
Oh.
But you know, I try, you know, as soon arresting people, that's my job.
Yep.
I try to stay neutral about it because they're people. At the end of the day, yeah, they make mistakes, but they're people. So he was getting evicted. He had just spent like all his money on these groceries and dog food. He's like, my dog didn't have any food. I got some money. So instead of like impounding his four-wheeler, taking like all of his frozen food away and letting it get ruined, he had a friend, and I released the four-wheeler to him, and the friend was like, I'll take care of your dog. So, you know, I try to handle people softer. As soon as I get you in cuffs, we can be humans.
Hey, nice.
You know what I mean? That's my philosophy.
Lieutenant Sparks, thank you.
So what would you do if you pulled
Hold
over?
on, we have to tell everyone who you are. This is Leah Brown, everybody.
Hi.
Leah Brown, say hey to everybody.
I'm Leah Brown.
Okay, go ahead, Leah.
My question for Lieutenant Sparks is, if you pulled over somebody whose registration was over a year expired, what would you do?
You get a ticket.
Just a
Really?
second.
Even if there was no other infraction?
Yeah. A year. I mean, you have to.
It's a man of the law over here. Is there somebody in this vicinity that might have an
Second question, you're not going to follow me out of the parking lot, are you?
I don't work here, so you're good.
Okay, good.
And it's not a felony, so I have no duty to do anything. So you're
That's
good. You're
good.
safe.
But you are at TCOL, right? It's Texas.
Yes, every officer in Texas is.
What's TCOL
under
stand for again?
TCOL, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement.
Yeah, so you're officially, so you could arrest a person who had a expired
Vehicle registration.
It gets a little tricky. It's not clearly not in my jurisdiction. So really, when I'm like playing close somewhere where I'm not working, like Austin doesn't carry my commission, Somerville does.
Right.
I'm licensed.
So would you have to take them back to Somerville, or could you if you arrest somebody, could you take them downtown to Austin?
If the only time that I have a duty to intervene is if I'm witnessing a felony or it's a like obvious disturbance of the peace. And in that case, I would just kind of hold them until the local police get here and just release them to them.
Oh, got it.
Do you get paid commissions on tickets?
Ooh, that's like a quota.
No quotas because
It's
it's unconstitutional to have a quota.
Really? Is that just a
Yes.
myth? Like,
Yes.
where do we get that from?
People being bitter that they get pulled over and get tickets.
And they're
you
like-
just want your quote. You just gotta meet your quota. It's like I don't have a quota. It's unconstitutional because you're telling me that I must write someone a citation. I must write these citations. Well, so I could make up infractions if I don't see any, right? I mean, it's unconstitutional.
Oh, that's
And,
interesting.
yeah.
Pastor Plek, how long has it been since you've gotten a ticket?
It's been a long, gosh. Oh, man. Over 10 years.
Was I with you when you got your last ticket?
Oh, my gosh. Did I get a ticket with you?
I think you did.
Was that when we were
Going like 95.
We may have been going a little fast. Was that when we were like driving to Oklahoma or something?
Something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is true. I think it's been since then. It's been a long time. I haven't
Nice.
really gotten a ticket, I think, since I've been married.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
that's a good segue into what it means to lead
There
your
we
family
go.
well.
so we got a
as
question
man.
here to the podcast. Thanks for asking all these questions. Male leadership in the family. What does it mean to cast vision for your family. And we have Lieutenant Sparks here who's going to tell us all about it.
What does it mean to cast vision for your family? To me, it's, Christ ordained man as the head of the household. And that comes with a lot of responsibility. The direction that your family goes, what your house looks like, what you represent. I mean, if you want to like get real pushy, like how you vote. I mean,
wow. All right.
Like all of that is like the duty, responsibility of the man to lead like by example.
Okay.
Like, what does your house look like? What do you want your house to look like? It's a partnership with your wife, 100%. Men were never called to be domineering or totally in control of every aspect of life. But at the end of the day, the success or failures of the marriage, right, wrong, or indifferent, falls on the man's shoulders. So it comes with a lot of responsibility, but it's a good responsibility.
Yeah. I think that's a good take on that. Leah, what do you think?
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer that question.
You're totally allowed to answer.
What does it mean to lead your family as the head of the household?
Yeah, I mean,
you're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. What do you think it means?
The point of the question is I'm not supposed to answer.
No,
so
I don't think that's the point.
Listen, we're in a Barbie world for a moment, so go ahead and share your thoughts on this. What does it mean for a man to cast leadership for his family, especially in today's culture, where I think it's either the matriarchy or the patriarchy. I feel like after watching Barbie and getting a full dose of that. What do you
Twice.
You watched it twice?
I saw it twice.
Wow, that's impressive. Who'd you go with the second time?
A friend.
Oh, nice. We'll leave that friend unnamed. Okay. Yeah. So
I have a lot of friends.
Yeah, you do have a lot of friends.
people wanted to see Barbie.
Yeah. And it'd be embarrassing if you listed off one. They I thought I was closer than that, and then
Yeah.
battles would ensue.
When you're me, you just can't really. You just can't do that.
Did you go by yourself?
No, but I will tell you that I was in the car driving by myself. I had a night to myself.
Nice.
And I called your wife.
Yeah.
And I said, I think I'm going to go see Barbie by myself. It had just come out. And I was like, but I might also come over and hang out with you. What should I do? She was like, come over. She's like, we'll go see Barbie next weekend with a bunch of friends. And I was like, all right, let's do it.
Oh,
so
that's funny.
I was going to go see I have no problem. I love watching movies by myself.
I could never do that.
Yeah, of course
Are you
not.
a movie by yourself guy?
I can do it. Because
That
there's
is so
no
weird.
questions.
No way.
If I'm in the theater paying money to watch a movie, I'm there to watch the movie. You talk to me when we're
Yeah,
done.
I don't know. I just maybe there's I have this insecurity about me that you've hit rock bottom if you're in the movie theater by yourself.
No, I think you've arrived.
Oh.
I'm gonna
self-confidence.
agree with her there.
All right, yeah. Clearly, I don't have it. Okay, yeah, that's fair. All right, but back to your view on male leadership. I'm not going to let this go because now clearly this is an issue. All right, so male leadership in the family. What does it mean for a man to cast vision for his family?
I mean, casting vision for your family, I don't know if I can answer that question, but I can tell you that I think male leadership means being so submitted to Christ and his will and having a close relationship with him that when you're following him, you're able to articulate that passion and that love you have, and that kind of spills over into your family.
Yeah.
That's what it means to me.
Yeah. And I think, so articulating vision, because again, if you're not articulating a vision, someone's articulating it for you. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things that sort of I've learned over time, that the vacuum of leadership is going to be filled by something or someone or media of some sort. And so I think, and it can be challenging because you have decision fatigue over time of man, I have to make another decision about another thing that I am wore out on, and I have to keep casting vision for a direction of where we're going. And so I think what that looks like is, creating a space of prayer or talking about God in the home. It's kind of like the Deuteronomy 6 sort of mindset of talking about God, and when you sit down and when you rise and when you go to work and when you're all the time you're talking about the Lord. And I feel like that's the right thing to do, because there's constant corrections to be made. And I think that can be challenging with your spouse, but with your children, and I think that's really good. So I feel like the leadership then is like, hey, we're going this direction, and anything that sort of pulls us away from that direction is not good. So how do you take that from vague to specific? I think it's
I want to
challenging.
ask a clarifying question.
No, give me a clarifier.
When you mentioned a decision fatigue at the top of that
Yeah.
monologue, how does that play into
Oh my
any
gosh,
of this?
it's like, all right, so your kid wants to be on a screen, and you've already said for the bazillionth time we're not doing screens, and they don't care. Then you have to make the decision and the follow through to address the problem, and then follow through with a disciplinary action that is equivalent to the level of disobedience, and that is hard. Or it's like, I need to think like this. What I'm wrestling through right now is like, I need to think through, all right, is Adrian and I going to get away for our anniversary next year, and think that through, and like, what obstacles do we need to overcome? And I feel like that's totally on me, but there can be a place of decision fatigue of like, gosh, there's so many things on the calendar that we've got to sort of watch out for in this time and that time. And it can be so difficult that then you do nothing. Like, so like, then you just sit there and go like, well, that's too hard. And I think that's what I feel like a lot of men do. And there's always the temptation to do that.
That actually sounds like the fruit of a lack of vision having been casted to me.
No doubt. No, absolutely.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I think, so it's a lack of vision because you're going to have to make a decision to say, we are casting said, like, hey, we're going to go for our intimacy plan for next year is we are going to spend time together without children at a certain location to celebrate being married to one another. Well, to do that takes a gazillion logistical decisions of yes to this, no to that, yes to this, no to that, yes to this, no to that.
So is that the male responsibility? Is that a man's job?
I think it's a man's job to cast the vision and sort of implement this. So when nothing happens, he's got to go, hey, we got to do this, and we're gonna say no to a whole bunch of stuff to make sure that the yes happens, and that's hard. And I'm not sure if there was like a underlying question behind that look.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
If I had a sarcastic question, I would have asked it.
I do appreciate that. Yeah. So I feel like that's where it gets hard. Is like you're constantly, I don't want to say on the ropes. That's a weird way to put it, but like you're constantly held accountable by God. And then when there's friction with your wife as a man, then it's your responsibility to lean into it, address it, hear her, and then if there's a correction need to be made in the leadership that the man has, then he needs to make it, because that's a woman's not there to just sit there and go like, yes, master, whatever you like. It's more of like, this is the compliment of, hey, wisdom would dictate this direction. I'm kind of willing to follow wherever you want to go, but we need to make some decisions. I think that's where a woman can come in and really help out her husband, because he may not make decisions really well, or might be in the middle of decision fatigue or vision fatigue, or all, and what happens, I think, for a lot of men is they kill it in the workplace where they're sort of expected to be, I don't know,
Macho.
Macho. And I think, and I don't want to blame culture, because I feel like we just, punt to culture all the time. But I think just vision drift at home is you don't get rewarded for like, way to go, you're a man of the family. Way to go, you planned a vacation. Way to go, like nobody's sitting around clapping when you plan a vacation and you're like, hey, I made time for my wife for us to be alone. No one's sitting there like, wow, that was amazing. They're like, wish I could do that. I feel like that's sort of the mentality you get, at least in our culture. And so it's not applauded when a man does that. Is that true? Do you think, Seth?
Oh yeah, no, that's 100% true, and it goes back to, like, the success or failures, all those things that you have to make these plans for, dictate just the success or failure of your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have to make, because for instance, for me, it's like if you want to take a weekend getaway, okay. You have to have a house sitter. You have to have a dog sitter. You got to make sure that work is squared away. Just to go away, you have a laundry list of things to go away for a day,
right.
an evening,
right,
a dinner.
right.
We have, and and no, they don't get applauded. It's a thankless position. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, and every man is probably different. But it's like, do you need that? Do you expect it? It's like, no, not really. But is it nice? For sure.
Right.
For sure.
And then also managing, like, I call, in the Army, we call these targets of opportunity. So there'd be moments of that were spontaneous, like where you see a high value target and you're like, oh, hey, we're going to move all of our forces to go and take out that target that just popped up on the radar. We were going to do this like civil policing experience, but then a high value target that we've been trying to arrest for a long time just popped up. And so you divert all your attention to that thing. And I think that happens in marriages. Like the crisis happens and now all the family needs to sort of divert because grandpa got sick or grandpa died or some sort of thing, some sort of crisis happens. And then it's the sort of the man's job to sort of lean into that, lead through that. And it can be challenging because you're having a lot of voices that you're listening to on what to prioritize. And I think that's where the difficulty, especially for people, it's not like everyone gets like marriage training. Like even if you went to premarital counseling, it's usually not about like your time that you're sort of working through. You're like, how do you talk about like your blah, blah, blah? And you're like, and nobody can hear that they actually have issues. Nobody, like you can't even, like premarital, I don't want to say it's worthless because don't hear that. But it's pretty worthless. And the reason why is you're living contractually. Like now I'm going on a different
Yeah,
topic.
that's a tangent.
It's a tangent, but you're living contractually. I'm going to stick with you as long as you don't stink. Now that's why we're together. And then all of a sudden you're married and now it's like I have sticked with you till death do us part. Like that's wild. That's a total different mindset that it's like you know, you're acting like an NFL player where you're putting your best performance out there until you get the contract and then you tank it. Like it feels like once isn't that true? Once the NFL player gets the contract, they're terrible. It's the same thing. Whenever you enter into covenant marriage, what happens for a lot of men? They're like they check out. I did it. I accomplished the thing. I got married. Moving on.
So, what is the biggest hurdle aside from like the logistical aspects, which we've kind of covered already, and the decision fatigue? What is the biggest hurdle to being the man of the household, the leader of the household?
Man, that is a great question. The biggest hurdle, I think the biggest hurdle is being able to be present. So, like for example, at a work environment, you have, hey, this is set a time to plan, set a time. You've got to set aside time to think about your family and directionally of where you want to go. And that's hard. I think that becomes, and again, in a world where we don't rest and we just go from stimulus to stimulus to stimulus, where we're so used to like, the biggest decision we make is what show we're going to watch tonight. I think that becomes really what's really difficult is like the actual planning process. Because I think in our culture we are incredible at executing. Like I think we are great executors, but it's the amount of time to take because you know all the hurdles that are coming. It can feel like a kid who's 10 years old who knows he needs to clean his room, but it feels like the biggest monstrous task of all time. So he never starts, procrastinates until he's beaten into submission by his mom. Like that's sort of how I view what could happen with planning and casting vision for your family is that you don't ever if you don't make time for it, it don't happen, and so therefore all of a sudden you're just executing life as opposed to initiating the best life for your family. Yeah.
Interesting. So what do you do if you're a man and you've married a really strong woman who's a really great leader?
That is super, super awesome.
What do you do?
So, but if you chose to marry a super strong woman who's clearly going to be the leader of the house, then you've kind of reserved your role as I'm not going to fight to be the leader because she's doing it.
But is that biblical?
No.
Yeah, it's tough.
I'm not saying it's wrong, but I don't think it's biblical, no.
So therefore wrong.
I mean,
yeah.
I see a lot of men.
You're right. Sorry.
I don't know if you can get away with that. It's like, is it biblical?
You're right.
No. Is it wrong?
Right. Yeah, you're right.
No, but I'm with you. I understand what you're saying. It's like, a strong woman is not the worst thing. In fact, I think it's the greatest gift. And what can happen is here's what happens for men that have strong women. That happens to a man that has a strong woman. He gets defeated. He gets like his feelings hurt because he came across a woman who was really strong, and she probably corrected, was able to see things, just takes initiative, and then he's constantly trying to play catch up, and instead of utilizing the gift set that his wife has, he then like goes and pouts. That's the problem that men can have, where they don't just take on the victorious glory that is the gift that God gave them. And so if you don't see your wife as a gift that God gave you, one to steward, right, then you're not implementing said gifts, and then all of a sudden you're abdicating your leadership role of really pulling out the best of your wife. Which then gets back to it's like an NFL general manager or an NFL head coach probably has, he has the off season to kind of sit through, think about his players, where he wants the direction for the team to go. And at some point, a man needs to sort of think through, like, I've got this like horse-powered, great wife. How are we going to implement said wife in the role of the family and using the gifts that she had? Because she might be an incredible logistical planner. It's just now all of a sudden we now got to implement said plan. What happens, though, with really gifted people, when they're not allowed to spread their wings and be utilized, that can be a place of resentment, and then bitterness creeps in from a wife's perspective, and then the man now has to overcome two things. One, that he knows he's got a really gifted person, and now the really gifted person is resentful of him, and so now he has a lot to overcome. And that's where it gets to be super challenging, but not impossible with the Lord. And so you have to have a Holy Spirit moment where you go to God, I need you to give me the wisdom and direction. And it's all the more important to really think through directionally where you want your family to go. And I think I mentioned like vacation, it's not just vacation. It's like, hey, children-wise, like I came up with one word for our kids this year, and it was read. Like we need to read. And honestly, that was it was like simple. If there's ever a spare moment like that I'm like trying to get the children to read something.
So that's you casting vision, right?
Right.
Okay, but what does that process look like? Is that process you come up with that one word and that's your word? Or do you sit down with your wife and do you define goals together and talk about what it's going to look like to execute those?
It can be either or. I think this is where it's personality dependent. Some guys do not do well in any sort of like brainstorming session. And so they need to really sit down in their own hole of their heart and sort of think it through. But there are, like, I'm more of a collective planner. I love the collective. I love throwing ideas up, and I don't get my feelings hurt if someone shoots them down. And so that is a directional way. It just, whenever, I think you have to lead through that, because it's not only when you have two people, the man might have a really strong woman, and she is like hell-bent on this thing, and it's not going to work, and he's got to gently but lovely and firmly be like, no, that's not the thing that I want us to go, but I really do appreciate your input, without her feeling like, why am I even here? I think that's you're ultimately going to be pinned up against those two things. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. So the best description I ever heard was, okay, the man's the head of the house, right? Well, the wife's the neck. You ever seen the head move without the neck? No. So I mean, and
I think it's My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That's the movie.
But so let's say that a man marries an accountant, right? But he doesn't utilize her accounting skills towards their house. Well, that's just a sign of a bad leader. So ultimately, that decision falls on him. Sign of a good leader, sitting down with your team, you're going to game plan. This is what we're trying to do. This is where we're going. These are the steps that I feel we need to do to reach that said goal, whatever that looks like, saving for vacation, retirement, whatever. Like, this is what that looks like. And like I said, it's a sign of a good leader to use your resources. And if you don't, well, then you're not a good leader.
And you need to improve.
Well, 100%.
You need to read some John Maxwell books and lift your lid.
Yeah.
Don't know.
No.
John Maxwell, that's like a boomer author.
Oh, yeah, totally. But he's great. Yeah, I mean, every boomer would love him. But Anyway, he is a boomer, so it kind of works out. All right, so what else?
Did
What?
you know that men, like 500 years ago, used to corporally punish their wives?
Yeah, and the rule of thumb.
The rule of thumb.
The rule of thumb was you couldn't beat your wife with a rod bigger
you
than the width of
imagine?
your thumb. Yeah, that's wild.
Man.
Now, now, do I think that was biblical? No. No, not biblical. That was dumb. And again, if you're having to beat your wife, you're probably not leading her very well.
I agree.
Right? I mean,
100%.
now, granted, or I guess back then your parents chose poorly because you needed someone that needed to be beaten into obedience. I feel like there's a whole lot of things that are going wrong at that point if you're having to lay hands on your wife like
If you're
that.
having to, no one has to do that.
Sure, I know,
If you're
but like if you're
choosing to,
like
right.
if you think that this is
It's lazy leadership.
right, exactly.
I'd agree.
It's problematic on so many levels. Just from a sheer, you've got to go Machiavellian to lead someone with threats and fear. When you lead through fear, you will get obedience as long as you're right there. When you lead through love, you get obedience even when you're not there. That is ultimately how obviously Jesus leads us through love, but that's the model that he's given us. And so therefore the enforcement clause isn't a beating. The enforcement clause is the Holy Spirit. The enforcement clause is the church. It's, relying upon a great community to kind of help you in those processes. And you're going to have points of contention. I think only unmarried people think that there is no points of contention in a marriage. And I think because anybody you care, if you don't care, then you're apathetic. And that's dangerous as well. Like I think the opposite of love here at some point, obviously it's fear, but I'd say the other place is just pure apathy. In fact, when husband and wife are yelling at each other, I go, hey, this is great. You guys are doing really, really well. And they always look at me so confused. I said, that means you care. You haven't just given up. You're not pouting in the corner. You still have some fight in you. Now we need to channel that fight and the passion that you have toward the right things. And that's the things of the Lord. And then you can say, oh, I can own my stuff because I clearly haven't been leading you in a way that you've felt led and you're following. So that's on me. If the student, or this goes back to teaching, if the student hasn't learned, the teacher hasn't taught. If the follower isn't following, the leader hasn't led. And I think that's just true. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I would love to hear your experience or just your thoughts on that as a woman, like as one, when vision is cast, because I kind of think of you as a strong woman. Like there's zero. I don't want to go zero. It's not that you're. I don't want to dig myself in the hole here.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So as a strong woman, how would you like to be led? Yeah, there we go. That might be a better way to put that. Like, what's your preference?
To do the leading is her answer.
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it
It's
is.
not. But I am particularly gifted in that area. So it is a unique challenge when I think a woman who is not just good at but gifted in leadership
Yeah.
gets married to a man who's
No,
supposed
okay,
to
but-
be
okay.
the
So
leader.
I think at some point you'd have, because I do think you work well collaboratively. You are a genius individually, but I think you can work well collaboratively. And I think that's for somebody like you, this is where you need a collaborative person to go a lot of, so what do you think?
Yes. I did spend a good portion of my life trying to stifle my gifts because I knew that they weren't ideal for the way God and through Paul outlines.
Right, but
biblical
I think
gender
you would
roles.
agree that it's now that when the gift of a woman like you is now, when that gift is handed, that's the wrong way. Anyway, but just put it this way, is given to a husband, now it's his role to kind of guide you through the process of like, okay, let's put your resume on the table. What gifts do you want to implement here? This is kind of like one of the things I did with Nicole and Melanie recently. I was like, hey, here, let's take your job description. Here's the things that you love to do. And like you wake up every day going, yes, I get to design the magazine for the church. Or here are the things like I can schedule your meetings, Chris. That does not make me angry. Or I don't want to do these these things over here. This is like I hate to do list. And I think at some point creating like a list like that, especially for somebody like you with an incredible amount of talent and gift set of like, here are the things that because sometimes you're good at stuff that you hate to do, and then that builds resentment, and nobody knows you're getting resentful of it. And so if a guy doesn't know that, be like, but that's what you do. You're the person that does that. Like you're really gifted at giving baths. Right? And like
you're particularly skilled at wiping baby bottoms.
Right. No,
Yes,
so like
very good at that.
And so what a man can do is like, I thought that was you living out your calling. And I think there are some moms like, I just like when I nurse, I'm at one with the world. When I wipe a bottom, I'm like, like
this is my purpose.
Yeah, like, so there are women like that. And so if you come off like you're, I don't know, you're doing it joyfully, but you never communicate that this is making you resentful or building resentment, then all of a sudden the guy's like, this is where most men are clueless to how their wives are feeling about stuff. Now, I definitely married a woman who always lets me know kind of where I stand at all times. So I have an advantage. I'm going to call that like at first I wasn't really thrilled about my advantage. And then over time I was like, oh, I have like the secret to life because I know exactly what Adrienne is frustrated with. I know exactly what she doesn't like. There's never a moment where she's like hiding anything, going like, so whatever she tells you on Marco Polo, she's already told me 3 times, and then she's gonna, which I appreciate that. I love that. At first it was a little like, so the whole world knows my whole life. That's fine. It was a little challenging, but then I realized the gift that is, and then it reveals the weaknesses in my leadership that I clearly have, and I have to overcome myself. So the first thing you have to do in leading a home is you have to lead yourself. And I didn't realize that, I think, for a while. I think when you're single, you're constantly all about yourself. Like you go to bed when you want, you wake up when you want, you eat when you want, you work out when you want, you read when you want. I did my best work, I think, between 11 p.m. and like 2 a.m. Then you get married, and then all of a sudden there's like, you have to coordinate your whole life with another person. And it's really frustrating and weird because they, when you're dating, they just somehow showed up between 11 and 2 and were able to kind of do whatever. And then all of a sudden now they have preferences that you weren't aware of that now you have to lead through. And that is difficult. And I think that's what makes it more challenging. But again, I think this is where if you have a wife that is vocal about her needs, which at first she was vocal about what I was doing wrong, and then we had a shift where she became vocal about her needs and what she was needing from me. And then I was like, oh, what you're saying is I stink at being a leader without saying I stink at being a leader, which I really appreciate that.
I'm going to take a little bit of credit for that.
Yeah, listen,
for the record.
Leah, you have been a Marco Polo savior. I appreciate that.
My best advice for women in this situation usually is you can tell him what the problem is, but you have to tell him what you need from him.
Right.
The solution.
Because I do feel like that. And the solution sometimes in a woman's head is tell the man what he should be doing, and you may know exactly.
No, you tell them what you
right.
need.
Because I think you could probably say like, oh my gosh, this is so simple. All you need to do is schedule a meeting and blah blah blah. But if you tell the man that, then immediately the defenses go up. Oh, what? So I can't. I'm half. We've gotten into stealing his man card, and that is like. Clearly he needs it if this is going on, but it's so debilitating. That's where a man usually goes into pout mode. At least that's where I would go into pout mode. And I had to overcome that over time by her being able to communicate with me in a way that said, I need to feel pursued. I'm like, oh crud, I'm not pursuing you? What do you... It just doesn't hit until like it's now something that she needs. Does that make sense? Yeah, so thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a great marriage counselor.
All right, so talk about that. How have you, like, for your preference? I'm just gonna put you, because you are, like I said, a strong woman. Because I think there's a lot of strong women I think our church is known for strong women. Like if there was a Spartan church, like that had Spartan women, they would like come back with your shield or honor. I think this would be our church. But like, talk to me about your preferences in being led. Like, as a strong woman, like that in general just doesn't go like, yes, sir, whatever you say. Like that's not your natural inclination. How do you communicate in a way that's still gentle, affirming all the things, and yet doesn't strip you of the very thing that you are, which is, all the way through awesome?
If somebody's confident, they're easy to follow. So if you're spending time with Jesus and you're confident in that relationship and you're confident in his word, it's not hard. It's not hard to follow that.
Yeah, I guess
that's all I.
Yeah, I think that's true. But there's so many. So here's where, for me, like on certain like issues, it's like, do I go? Do I wait? Do I go? Do I wait? And you're listening to the Lord, and you're not 100% confident. And I think this is where I'm like, crud, I don't know what the right answer is. And I'm trying, and then sometimes
that's too bad. I always know the right answer.
Now I will say, in my younger days, I knew exactly the right answer, and then it would be wrong, and I'd be like, crud. I think I've given you advice over the years, so I was like, take that one back.
Yep,
right?
You'll be answering for that at the pearly gates.
And so I think there's like, over time, you get to a place where you're like, I don't want to say questioning yourself, but this is like a real question. As a man who is like, I'm like wrestling with the thing and I don't know clearly directionally where to go, how can you bring that up to your wife without her like losing her mind and be like, yep, I knew it, you're worthless? Like, is that vulnerability going to be received well? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, you just be like, hey, I'm wrestling between this and this. Here's the upsides of this. Here's the upsides of that. What do you think?
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, why is that so hard?
No, I'm not saying it is hard, but sometimes that can come off as not being
the vulnerability.
Confident. Yeah, the vulnerability
presenting
aspect is the challenging part, because at times it may come off as weakness, and then the wife sees that as I don't know if it's an opportunity, but more of like, oh no, I need to take over here. I'll take the reins back. Thank you very much. I think that's where the struggle comes for men to be vulnerable with their wife in decisions that they're not sure on, because they feel like if I let her in on the fact that I don't know what to do, then she's going to lose confidence in me, and therefore I'm going to pay for it later. I think that's now, is that right? No, but that's, I think, real.
Yeah, I mean, leadership is risky, so buckle up, buttercup. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, as you would. I do appreciate that. Seth, what do you think?
Take the risk.
Yeah, Seth, tell me about that for you. Like, when it comes to leading, how is it to be vulnerable? Not that I don't think of you generally as a super vulnerable guy.
Yeah, it's not one of my strong suits, for sure.
So how do you like, if that's not your strong suit, how do you overcome? What do you think would be a way to overcome in that? And then Leah, I want you to chime in whenever he says.
Well, go back to kind of what you were saying just a second ago. Like, if every time you, like, let's say you're married for a very long time, and every time in the past, let's say you got a strong wife, a strong woman,
yeah,
and every time you've opened up that door for vulnerability, she's taking the reins and taking over,
right,
leaving you feeling, like you said, worthless, emasculated, all these things. And over time, that builds up. That adds up, and it will get to a point of resentment where we're like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to do it, and you're just going to have to hang on and
and
I follow.
And I think the answer obviously is 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 12. I had this thorn in my side. 3 times I pleaded for the Lord to take it away from me. But he said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. So therefore I'll boast all the more of my weaknesses, that Christ's power may rest on me. I'm not saying the wife is the thorn in the side.
Yeah,
no,
you
I did
were.
not say that. You said that.
That's what she immediately went
No,
there.
I will not let that be twisted. I was saying there was a thorn. No, we don't know what the thorn was. But I think that's where you got to go, and you say, like, you got to lean into the weakness and trust Jesus through that.
100%.
And I think this is where, so in combat, there is like this, you have a periphery of, like, when you relax, you can see the whole battlefield. But then whenever you have the fight, flight, or freeze response, all you see is the enemy. And I think as people become emotionally overwhelmed, challenged, or whatever, all they see is enemy. And so that's why whenever you have a triggering response, you feel you start to sweat, you get hot, you get, all the things happen, and all you see is enemy. In general, you don't go like, so let me share my feelings right now. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Like you don't go there. So I think what happens then is, and this goes back to, because we live in constant stimulus and we don't rest well, we don't know how to think it through, come back and lead, because we're being bombarded, because we go from blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to look at my phone. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, everyone else stinks. Like, you're a victim. Like, I think that's what happens, as opposed to coming before the Lord and letting him wrestle with you through the thing. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I lose you?
Yeah. Well, sorry.
No, it's good. Where were you? I'd love to hear where you were.
I was just thinking about, when you're in that fight or flight mode, the first thing that you have to do is to regulate your upstairs brain with your downstairs brain.
Ooh, a little.
You have to get out of that mode
That reminds
in
me
order
of
to
the Whole
make
Brain
any
Child.
progress.
Have you read that book?
Oh, I have read that book.
Yeah, that's his Whole Brain Child book.
Yeah, it's also like just brain science. Like,
right. So how do you regulate
identify that you are going into a fight or flight, and you're making your wife or husband the enemy.
Right. And I think
you
that's
got to
why
get out of that.
We've got to get out. Remember, our
You
battle
can't.
isn't against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces of darkness. And I have to say it out loud.
What would be a spiritual force of darkness in that situation?
My pride.
Is that a spiritual force of darkness,
heck-
or is that just your flesh, your natural sin nature?
Well, I mean, it's still spiritual. I mean, everything's spiritual.
Okay.
Fair, right? I mean, like, I
You don't
can't.
think there's like this pride demon circling your?
No. I mean, I
marital
guess there could be.
conflict?
I'm not going to say there's not, but most likely, it's like I look at you and I see you are impeding me from getting what I want, what I deserve. That's what's going on. And so when I look at my wife and I don't see myself, remember whoever looked at, whoever wanted to hurt his own flesh, but he nourishes and takes care of it. And that's what you're supposed to do. So like, clearly I need to go and heal the thing that is wrong. But the problem is I've now made you the enemy. And this is where you don't fall back. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall back to your highest level of training. Mm-hmm. And so if I have not trained myself to go, hey, I need to take a break right now because I'm angry and I'm seeing you as the enemy. And that's just not real. And I know that's not real, but it feels real right now. Give me a break. And they'll be like, and then that's when you're like, how long do you need? I need 10, 15, I need an hour, I need whatever I need. And then you come back and you sort of reconcile and restore. That's high level train, but you've got to train it. If you don't train it, it won't happen. And if one of the spouses thinks it's ridiculous, like, I can't believe we're literally training on how to talk to each other. No, then that means you're not ready for a real relationship where you have to implement something that is not natural. It's supernatural to trust the spirit and not the flesh, because then that's where the spiritual forces of darkness kick in.
Cool.
Well, that's 100% right. I mean, even like in police work,
Yeah.
you have to train and train and train and train to be able to, perform your job well. And every single thing that you train is a perishable skill.
Right.
Your brain starts to lose information. So if you're not actively training on any, like a relationship, things to do, how to talk to each other, signs of, ooh, I made her mad. That's a touchy subject. If you're not training your brain to recognize these things,
Yep.
you'll lose it.
So here's one of the things. Now this is one of the ways I cast vision and implement. It's like, I want my boys to be the first thing they do whenever they have a problem, they've lost something, they lost someone, whatever, is they pray. So whenever they lose a stuffed animal, hey, did you pray about it? Oh, eye roll. But then they go off and they start praying. Then whenever they have a fight, I go, all right, Austin, what do you say? Oh, crud. He's like, I'm sorry. You need to empathize. I'm sure that made you feel sad. Good. Next. Will you forgive me? Good. And what can I do to make it right? And they walk through it. So now, like, they know the process so well that Austin just goes straight into it.
Okay. So interesting way of training here, because are you actually helping them understand, or are you just teaching them the right things to say?
So
That's kind of what it sounds like to me.
You're teaching the right things to say, but like it's like when a child learns the gospel, at 4 years old they can recite the gospel? Do you not teach them the gospel because they don't fully wrap their head around it? No, you teach them the words, and then eventually you explain why the depth of meaning that has.
What if you walked your kids and you actually asked questions to help them come up with the right answer on their own, so that they're figuring it out, not just saying the right things?
So I think you need to do both.
Okay.
I think you need to do both. I think with apologies, to empathize, that takes real work. That takes real heart questions. That takes real
Yeah. How would you feel if Titus did that to you?
Right. And we go through that.
What do you think you can do to make it right?
Right, but when you're not, so what you want them to do is to go through that process without you there, and that takes training because
I feel.
But it's just like when you're in anything, like you don't want to have to think about the words you're going to say, because in the moment you don't rise to the occasion with let's talk about our feelings. You go back to your highest level of training. When your highest level of training is like, I'm angry and I'm blah, blah, and there's no structure for you to work on. That's why the structure is so important, which is why when I do marriage counseling or coaching, I hammer this thing. I'm like, number one, we're going to apologize and empathize. Number two, we're going to ask for forgiveness. Number three, we're going to ask, what can I do to make it right? Pound it, pound it, pound it, pound it. And then eventually they start to realize like, oh, I'm sorry doesn't work, because nobody cares that you're sorry. And remember, I always said this when I was a kid. I know you're sorry, now apologize. Like you've got to have empathy in there, and empathy is not something that you can fake. You've got to truly
No, you can.
Okay.
You can fake all of this. You can fake an apology, you can fake empathy, you can fake a resolution. And if you're faking it with somebody that can tell, then you're screwed.
Yeah, but if you have
and oftentimes that's your wife.
But
they can tell.
That's my point. If you have no framework to work with, you're just sitting there with I don't have a map. I'm just supposed to know how to do this. I think that's my point, is that you need some framework, and that's why I train that early and often. And with all the couples I deal with, I'm like, you've got to have a framework. Now fill it with the flesh of real, genuine sorrow and genuine empathy and owning your own sin. And then truly come and put the power in their hand. I mean, it's a real, you're truly putting when I go, Leah, will you forgive me? I am left, if I say I'm sorry, well, I can just walk away, and you're like, well, okay.
Yeah, you are sorry.
Yeah, but will you forgive me? I have to have an answer. And you're going to be either yes or no. I don't have to think about it. And so I think that's powerful.
Yeah. I'm not totally disagreeing with you.
I'm just saying. Listen,
I'm intrigued.
I'm not for just pure rote memorized statements. However, you have to have rote memorized statements to kind of hang. It's like having Acts prayer.
I think you can have a roadmap that's not completely with fill in the blanks.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because first off, I think probably the primary problem is people don't know how to bring up issues to another person. They don't know how to say it hurt me when you said that thing in a public gathering and it embarrassed me. It embarrassed me when you said that thing in front of everybody. Nobody talks like that.
Yes, they do.
No.
Yes, they do.
No.
Yes.
I've never heard
Emotionally intelligent people do.
Right. Do you think most people are emotionally intelligent?
They're becoming more and more that way, I think.
You think people are?
I do.
No.
Yes.
They
I
are
think
they
as
are
generations...
stuck on their phone. They're stuck on
100%.
their thing. They're just constantly getting stimulus. They don't think about how they feel.
Oh,
so
I
that's
disagree.
why you have to
completely disagree.
You have to think about... That's why people go to counseling. Because they have to think about, they need space where someone's asking them the questions that they could probably be asking themselves in private, but it's a really healthy spot to have
more and more
somebody
people, as generations come up from the bottom, are going to counseling, and they're learning what it looks like to ask these questions to themselves, to other people. Whereas, you take previous generations,
Fair enough.
elder generations.
Okay, the boomer generation did not...
I wasn't going to, call anyone out.
Well, I'm just let's call the boomer generation out. Do they know how to, own their own feelings? Heck
no. Their feelings are
Agreed.
weakness.
Okay, agreed. Stoicism was the highest value for the boomer generation. I'll
Rub
give you that.
some dirt in the cut,
You're fine.
even if it's bleeding.
Yeah.
Your arm's
stop the
broken,
bleeding.
but you don't need to go to the doctor.
Okay, fair enough. No, I'll
Not
give you
speaking from personal experience.
No, but I'll give you that people are more emotionally in tune now than they were 50 years ago, 60 years ago, no doubt. I will totally give that to you. But I still think I think we have a long way to go.
It's not bad to have some one-liners in your back pocket.
Yeah, I mean,
but you need to be able to have the heart behind them too. Is what I'm.
I mean, I preach
arguing.
essentially the same message every week. I have a template, but it's not the same.
Don't tell people that.
Yeah,
It makes you look inauthentic.
Sorry. Yeah, but I do. I mean, I kind of I tell a story right off the bat that has something to do with me. Then I say,
You're
like,
still
don't we all
telling
feel
people.
like this?
You're telling everybody the secret
I
sauce.
know that's it, but it's fine. But I have a template. Because I go back to my highest level of training to that's what I learned in seminary. That's what I learned in preaching school. That's what you do. So I feel like that's the importance of it. And I think if people are handicapped because they don't have a roadmap.
Yeah.
For sure. No, and I think one of the things so you're kind of talking about this roadmap from an adult's perspective. And it's like, yeah, adults can fake empathy because they've had this whole life with no training. I'm like, I'm going to say what I can to diffuse the situation, and it's fine. It's done. I think the important thing, and this goes back to being a leader of the household and a father. I mean, I don't have kids, but the father is there while he's showing empathy to say that's not genuine.
Right.
And you need to be genuine in these feelings.
Right.
And that way they grow up saying, I need to be genuine in my feelings, as opposed to saying what you need in the moment to get out of the situation.
Right.
That's the point.
Huge, because that's the one thing that it's like when they say, I'm sorry, I'm like, okay, that doesn't count. Try again.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Why are you sorry? I'm sorry because if you would have done that to me, I would have raged on you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there we go. Now we can, and that's usually how it goes. And I think anyway, but I think what's important beyond children, but we have to train that as adults, to your point. I think we're now at an emotional quotient level of where we can handle that reality that we need to be expressive of emotion. Machine Gun Nick is learning he has emotions. It's really great. Machine Gun Nick is in studio today. Good to see you.
In the audience, the live audience.
The live studio audience.
Well, I think it's worth pointing out that you are a father of boys, and I am a mother of a little girl.
You are a mother of a little girl.
So the work that goes into helping her navigate her emotions comes a lot naturally and younger, I think.
Yes.
So it's not good enough.
Boys, this is what I've learned with 4 boys, is they express emotion physically. And girls do that a little bit differently. Is it with vocally? Would that be the best way to put that, or just
girls?
Yeah.
Yes, they express it outwardly.
Right. Whereas
their
boys
voice
go.
More, yeah. Well, my daughter does that too, but.
Well, Titus will go and pout. Jet will go and rage. Austin will just go outside and jump on the trampoline.
Yeah, but the common denominator here is that they all experience those emotions.
No doubt.
And they all have to learn how to handle them.
And I have to pull those out. Like when Titus goes into the great thing about Jet is nobody's wondering how he's feeling. Like there's not one person going like, so Jet, are you happy or sad right now? He is like full expressive whatever. But Titus is probably a little bit more reserved, and I have to pull out his heart and be like, what when he's angry about something or hits something, I have to go like,
yeah.
What's really going on? I have no friends at school. Like, oh, okay. So and that takes a while, and I think that's part of it. Of like, a father's now we're into I guess it's leadership, male leadership. A part of a father's role is pulling out the deep things of your child to go, what is really going on? When you're angry like this, what is really happening? And then that might help with an email to Titus' teacher going like, hey, Titus is having a hard time with whatever. Can I'd love for your help in this situation. So child advocacy right there.
Yeah. Yesterday, my daughter got out of the car and she said, everybody's happy but me. I'm the only one who's sad. I don't want to be sad alone.
Oh, that's so great. And what did you say?
I
Suck it
told
up,
her,
Buttercup.
nope. No, actually, I was like, you can be sad. It's okay to be sad.
Oh, good for you.
But I'm not going to be sad with you.
Oh, man. That's sympathy, not empathy, right?
No, that's like you own your own emotion. Don't drag other people down with you.
Oh, I like that.
I'm not going to judge you for it. Like, you can be sad. That's fine. It's still dinner time, and you're still going to eat mac and cheese. It's going to happen.
Man, that's a whole
really.
other issue of like, how do you get kids to eat? Well, we'll talk about that next time.
You just put
It's tough for
something
that
on
one.
the table.
Hunger strikes. We'll have to-
Oh, I've dealt with my fair share of those, but I just don't care.
yeah, way to go.
Just, you don't have to eat it. That's fine. Go to bed. Bye.
I like it.
I was a child that there was never enough food on the table, so I just don't have a lot of actual sympathy for hunger striking picky people.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd think, though, that they would change after a while. They don't. They just get skinny.
No, they don't.
Just get skinny.
They're just underweight and malnourished. But
That's
it's fine.
hilarious.
All right. Hey, so glad all of you have joined us today on the show. Would love to talk more with you and any questions you may have of faith, culture, everything in between. Remember, the number is 737-231-0605. Or go to pastorplek.com. Make sure you like right now. You need to like it, share it. There's a friend that you know needs to hear this, or subscribe. We would love to have
Definitely
more.
subscribe.
You need to subscribe. Like, let's go. Anyway, so listen, from our house to yours, have an awesome week of worship.